September 25th, 2025. It'll be a freaking miracle if I manage to say anything worth listening to, but I have been turning around a bunch of ideas in my head. On the topic of NI versus AI and other things. So I'll rewind you all the way back to the very first episode of this very podcast, NI versus AI podcast by Charles Linart, by the way. The very first episode I talked about, I defined it, and artificial intelligence is basically intelligence that comes from outside. You're given a set of instructions and parameters, and as long as you stay within those parameters and follow those instructions, then you're intelligent. And I explained that organic beings, many human beings, in fact, probably a majority of so-called intelligent people are artificially intelligent. They're just doing what they've been told, and doing what they're told, and that's what they've always done, and it's always worked out for them, and great. But let's say things aren't working out so well, and let's say a lot of people go through life with some kind of grass is greener mentality. Like, let's say you're in a job that you hate, and rather than looking for a new job or starting a business or something, you start looking at all the people around you who have quote unquote better jobs, and you say, the grass is greener, how come they have it so good? And maybe you're wary of the grass is greener because once upon a time you had a job you hated, and you jumped ship to another job that you hated even worse, so either way, the simplest thing is to not worry about the grass over there. And if your grass isn't so green, you got to water it. Maybe take note of what they're doing over there. Maybe they're thatching or, using some kind of fertilizer, or, just watering regularly. Or maybe the soil's just better over there, probably not. But, so instead of pining over the grass on the other side of the fence, take care of the grass on this side of the fence. And here's where the artificial intelligence concept comes in, because we're all kind of running through life on autopilot, basically. And this is almost like on a biological level. You have three brains. You have one in your head, one in your heart, and one in your gut, right? So it's the brain in your gut that, tells you, don't do that. And so you stay in this crappy job that you hate because last time you jumped ship and went for the greener grass, it wasn't greener. So you're like, well, I hate this job, but, it's familiar. I'm comfortable with it. So I'll just, grin and bear it. And that's why so many people are kind of unsatisfied with their lives, because they're controlled by their kind of shadow. This is what they mean when they say shadow work, right? You have to look at the dark side of that. Okay, so you jumped ship to another job 10 years ago and it didn't work out so well, and now every time you think about it, your gut goes, oh no, don't do that. That's and so most of us these are the parameters that constrain us, these usually kind of bad experiences where your body actually says, reminds you every time you're faced with that same situation, your body says, okay, do this. And so you do this. And then you get stuck in this kind of loop pattern. I don't know. And but you stick with it because it's familiar, and that's just your body, your gut telling you, okay, well, don't don't try to change anything because this is and here's the thing. That's exactly how machine artificial intelligence operates. So it's given a set of instructions, procedures, data sources, and parameters, and it navigates within those. But as a natural intelligence, you can rewrite all those things, or you can examine all those things. You can say, maybe this data isn't so good. The math ain't math in here with this data. Or you can go, you say I have to do this because of X, Y, and Z. Well, what if Y isn't true? And so you can rewrite your programming, but most people won't, because they've got those shadows, those traumas, those little, triggers that say, oh, don't do that, or do this. Sometimes it's, you're caught in a destructive behavior pattern because, it's always, numbed your pain or whatever before. So, and that's where you got to freeze frame it. You got to go, okay, what gets me into this destructive or self-limiting behavior pattern? Freeze frame. What is it? You go, well, it's because, this happened so long ago, but does that mean this is always the way it has to happen? No. And you can adjust accordingly. And here's where it starts to get good. So I hope you're still listening. So to rewrite your programming and start to water your own grass, the first step is to freeze frame on that moment, or that whatever, as uncomfortable as it may be, and see how it trained you to be in the pattern that you're in now. That's the first thing. Okay, freeze frame, there's my shadow. That's what happened. That's why I do this or don't do that. And then you go, okay, well, what if I tried something else? And that's where, you really start to tilt the quantum field in your favor. Okay, because you'll see that your life is what it is because of the things you've thought, felt, and done, okay? And this corresponds to the head brain, the heart brain, and the gut brain, okay? So where was I going with that? Your life is a result of your thoughts, your feelings, and your actions. And if you are unfulfilled in your life, then rather than ruminating about the green grass on the other side of the fence or the other side of the street or whatever, go, all right, well, my life is as it is because of the thoughts, feelings, and actions that I have taken. And what don't I like about my life? And then you go, okay, why do I do that? What thoughts, feelings, and actions, cause this? That's the freeze frame. And you go, oh, okay, well, let's change those then. Because, a lot of, once in a while I'll stumble on some stupid video, or I guess it all kind of goes back to that book, The Secret or whatever, Neville Goddard or whoever, first came up with this idea, the law of assumption or the law of attraction. It's like, yes, that's the feeling part of it, you have to feel the successful outcome, but you also still have to proceed intelligently and do the things you need to do. Okay, it's not like, oh, I can feel myself driving a Lamborghini. It's like, man, that's not going to get you a Lamborghini. But all right, so let's wrap this up. So as a naturally intelligent being, you're able to rewrite not only the algorithm, so to speak, Yeah, that's it. You're able to rewrite yourself and change the course of everything. You know, there are so many miracle stories of people who were just down for the count, and then they came roaring back and started successful businesses. Millions of those stories, okay? You might be one of them. I hope you are. But those are all stories of people who freeze-framed their life, evaluated what they didn't like, you know, maybe patted themselves on the back a little bit for the things they do like, you know, like maybe you have some character trait that, you know, is part of your fundamental algorithm. It's like written in the stars or whatever. Let's say you're like a very kind, loving, strong person, and you can persevere through all kinds of hardship and bullying and heartbreak and whatever, and still come out the other side as this kind, loving, strong person, you know. Maybe even kinder, more loving and stronger, you know. So yeah, you have to have, you know, have sight of your kind of North Star and the things that don't change and the things that give you the lay of the land, right? That's what a North Star is. It's like, okay, now I know which way is east, which way is west, which way is, you know, which way. And those are like your character traits or your God-given talents or, you know, fundamental parts of yourself. Those, you don't want to rewrite those. Or maybe you do, you know, maybe, you know, some people are like fundamentally petty. It's just part of their character. Like a lot of Virgos are like that. Not all Virgos, but a lot of them are very petty. It's just part of their character. So, again, the shadow work, freeze frame. Okay, I was petty. All right, that's not a very good character trait. Maybe I'll try to change that. But the good ones, you know, you want to hang on to those and develop them. So in, you know, taking control and maybe rerouting your, shall we say, learned behaviors or conditioned responses or whatever, you know, when you evaluate those and you look at the darker side of those, and you really address that, and then you start to act differently, feel differently, you know, start to feel good about yourself, have some confidence, and think differently, you know, then things can start shaking. So let me give you an example of, just to wrap this all up. So let's say you have a person who, you know, is in a job they hate, you know, feels very unappreciated or whatever, and has always had a dream of, you know, like writing a children's book or something, because they're good at drawing and they're good at writing. So, you know, they've always had this dream, well, if I could write this children's book, and, you know, maybe they go off into Walter Mitty fantasies about how it becomes a big hit and they can quit their shitty job and, you know, all this stuff. But they never actually do it because, you know, they're so tired from their shitty job, and mostly because they believe they can't do it. So if you believe you can't do something, then right there you just collapsed the quantum wave on that reality. You can't. If you believe you can't, you can't. So that person, for whatever reason, believes that they can't write a children's book, and so they never do. You know, maybe they even had a negative experience in the past where they drew something or wrote something, and, you know, all their friends, you know, laughed at it or something, you know. Like they danced, they asked their crush out to the school dance and gave her a card or whatever, and you know, she rejected him right in the middle, you know, of the lunchroom, and everybody laughed, and, you know, she threw his drawing in the trash. And that's if he freeze frames that response, he'll go, oh, that's what it is. It's because I feel like I'm not good enough, or I have that negative experience around creating something and putting a lot of love into it. So you go, all right, well, that was a long time ago. Who cares? I'm going to write this children's book. You know, I don't care if no one else ever reads it. You know, what happens, I'm just going to do it because I can. And I'm going to, then they add some feeling to it, some love. They go, you know what, I'm going to write this children's book for my nephew, Johnny, as a Christmas present. And so he writes a children's book and, self-publishes it, but prints it nicely on, with a hardcover, a nice cover. And, he wraps it up and gives it to Johnny for Christmas. And it turns out Johnny loves the book. And he's so proud that his uncle, made this book for him. And he's like showing all his friends, hey, check it out. My uncle wrote this book just for me. And all his friends read it. And they think it's pretty cool, a pretty good book too. And, before you know it, the PTA wants, copies for every kid in Johnny's class. And, it goes from there. But it all starts with that moment when they go, yeah, that incident in the school lunchroom. That's why I've held back on this, and I can, I don't know what the outcome will be, but I can do this. I've always been called to do this. It's part of my God-given gifts, my North Star, my beacon, So once you start to follow those things, then the rest of it kind of falls into place. But it's hard to follow those things if you're stuck in these, kind of unfulfilling patterns that, your body has trained you to be in because, remember when that happened? That was uncomfortable. Don't do it again. So just stay in your crappy job and, just stay in this miserable relationship where you basically hate each other. Because it's, it's familiar. So who knows what else is out there, And sometimes it's not doing something. Like, okay, I always do this thing. Why do I always do this? It's not always just, hey, man, do it. Well, for positive things, it is. Negative things, things that are unhealthy or detrimental, those patterns, I don't know. I still struggle with those myself. By the way, I'm not some ascended master here. I'm still failing and learning myself. But, but that's, I think, what I wanted to say. Use all three of your brains and have the courage to quote a catchphrase, do the shadow work. Look at the maybe somewhat dark reasons why you have fallen into certain, unproductive or even destructive loops in your life. And, don't look at other people in their lives and say, oh, that's, the person who envied their friends' jobs, their friends probably hate their job just as much as they do, So, stop looking at the grass on the other side of the fence and start watering your own grass by, using your whole, all three forms of intelligence and, rewriting the algorithm and changing the parameters if you have to. Oh, that's all I got to say today. I'm Charles Linart. This has been the NI versus AI podcast. Peace, love, and happiness to everyone.